Today I want to talk about adding color to a value painting. It's a good exercise to be able to focus on color and not worry about the values, because you do the values ahead of time with white and ivory black, doing a full value painting, letting that dry, and then making color decisions with the values already set. It's a good way, again, to kind of separate value and color and just focus on both of them separately. So the image I'm painting from here is a picture from Greece when I painted there. I do a black and white here, but this is somewhat of a sunny day. The sun was going in and out. At this point, there's still enough sunlight to really call it a sunny day and to be able to push the contrast between the sunlight and the shadow, and also push the temperature between the warm and the cool. This is my value painting, just again using ivory black and white, setting things up each plane or big area using 2 to 3 values. 2 values in the background mountains, probably 3 values in the trees, and 3 values in the foreground hill here. Keeping the values simple and the shapes simple really helps understanding the values, because if I have too many shapes, then the values become difficult to work with and figure out. But fewer shapes allows you to really focus on fewer values. And then color also becomes a lot easier when shapes and values become more simple. So used ivory black and white, got all the values put in. I'm painting just like I would with color, fairly thick. Thinking about edges as well, keeping the edges within a shadow area soft, and keeping the edges between dark and light, keeping those harder. I let this dry for a few days and then start the color and just work back to front. The sun, this is kind of a backlit scene, so the sun is kind of in front of me in the sky, so it's going to be a warm sky. It's not going to be a cool blue sky. Because I'm looking into the sunlight, I want to use a color that suggests sunlight, and yellow works real well there. Then as I move forward, again, just back to front, kind of overlapping shapes as they come forward. Distant mountains are a blue, so a violet or blue violet is a bit warmer than blue. So that's going to create depth there, and then the grassy hillside here is more of a green to yellow green. And that's warmer, and that's going to come in front of the background mountain there. So again, just gradually moving forward. Right now I'm just seeing lights. I'm not really doing any value changes till I get to the next level. And here's my palette. You can see my colors are titanium white, cad yellow light, yellow ochre, cadmium orange, cad red deep. At this, I was using cad red deep instead of a medium. Burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and also in there is a dioxazine violet and viridian hue. But as I'm mixing the mountains, I want to overlap these piles of color so that they kind of harmonize, going from this to that to that and to this, and just gradually overlapping. They harmonize, and I'm pretty much sticking with cad yellow light, alizarin crimson, and ultramarine blue just for the block in, just to simplify the color to go along with simplified values, and get things filled in before I start using the rest of the palette. Now as I come forward, again, values get darker. I've added a shadow up here on the hill, a shadow here. And I'm thinking in terms of colors on the color wheel. So in the shadows in here, I'm thinking a blue violet, ultramarine blue, a little bit of crimson, and then the complement of either cad yellow, or I can mix an orange, just to mute that just slightly. And then the light area here, just a white and orange, muted with a little bit of blue. Again, I created the orange with yellow and crimson, just to stick with those 3 primaries for the block in. And then as the lighter, grassier area comes in front here, it's a lot warmer, so it's going to pull forward, creating that depth as things go back. Now moving to the trees, and the trees here, the light and the shadow have to be darker than the light in the background in order for it to come forward. But also, the trees are an upright plane. So overall, they're going to be darker than the background. Overall. But you can see where, this might be a little darker than some of the shadows there. But I do have some real darks here and here and here that really pull the trees and the shacks there forward compared to the background. And color-wise, I'm just trying to get warmer as I come forward. So the greens here are going to have more yellow in it, maybe yellow-orange compared to back here. And even compared to back there, this is more of a blue-green, which makes it stay in the distance, then gradually adding more yellow as I come forward. Now I added a little reflected light. You can see right in here, and just mixing in orange and scrubbing it in there. You can see on the previous, it's kind of just a flat value in the shadow there. And I'm adding some of the reflected light. The sunlight hits in front here, then it bounces up into the foliage, the shadow of the foliage, and kind of warms it up, gives it a little bit of an orange glow there from reflected light. It just keeps it from going flat. Again, before adding the reflected light, I want the painting to read this way at this stage. Then it makes it easier to add things like the reflected light in there. Adding some of the foreground here, the yellow grasses. Again, I have to think in terms of foreground. So the color is going to be a bit more saturated, a bit warmer compared to the background. So it comes forward. This is obviously really light compared to some of the lights in the background, but it's so much warmer that pulls it forward. And everything being equal, things get lighter as they recede. That doesn't mean yellow grass in front is going to be lighter than, shadowed trees in the background. But they are going to be a lot warmer and more saturated with color, so they'll come forward. Now, as I move on, you can see my mixtures. Again, overlapping, kind of pulling the colors together slightly. I still have separate lights and separate halftones and separate darks, but overlapping so they harmonize a bit more, kind of ties them together. Don't always do that, but I think that helps here to, again, create a bit more harmony. And you can see the paint's fairly thick. The shadows here are a little thinner, but the lights are a lot thicker. Now adding the grasses in the foreground here on this hill on the right, going from yellow to yellow-green, yellow-orange, orange. Just trying to vary the color a little bit. The basic color is a yellow-green, but you want subtle color changes in there to make it a bit more interesting. Now adding some color in here in the shacks, kind of a grayish violet. Two values here. They're both kind of in shadow, but I want them slightly muted, and I do want them a violet. So same thing here, it's more of a reddish orange, so burnt sienna, a little bit of blue, and getting some shadows on the road, and the color on the road as well, and the color on the bushes. A little different from the color on the grass. Again, I want some color variation, and using the colors on the palette, which are colors from the color wheel, I can just add one color to a pile just to make it a little bit different, to create some subtlety in there, which creates a lot more interest than all the greens being the same green or all the violets being the same violet. Just subtle changes can add a lot more interest. Now knocking some of these down here, the reddish orange and the violet, a bit grayer, adding some darker accents in front. Also, the shadow in here, the tree trunks are two values. I got kind of a dark halftone and then a lighter dark and then the darkest dark. So three values in there. One is real flat, two makes it a bit more three-dimensional, but three values within those trunks really gives it a lot more depth inside that shadow area. Now adding the lights, also a little bit of strong color, a touch of violet there, stronger green, kind of in the halftone of the trees, just to punch the color a little bit. Here I'm adding the lights on the tree. And again, this has to be a different value from the lights on the ground. In this case, the lights on the tree are darker than the lights on the ground. But the key is just don't make them the same. They can be lighter, but they can't be the same. That'll flatten our painting, because our painting is already two-dimensional. So we want to create a bit more depth in there by adding some color variation. And here it's starting to add details now, some dark accents, some spots of color in there, A little color variation, some orange in the green. Because I got a basic green, a lighter green, and then an orange scrubbed in there. And it helps to have that initial overall color for that value. Then go back into that and add a subtle color change. Because that initial overall color and value holds everything together. It keeps it from jumping out. These little dark accents are important because they just help anchor things down and create a bit more contrast. I don't want to get real dark on a lot of the shadows, but I do want to get real dark on these small accents in here. And that's the last stage. This was a quick demo I did. And here are the black and white values set up the color, keeping the values to about 3 in each of the large areas. Any more than that just becomes detail. And there's not much detail in here. Zoomed in a lot more than the photograph. Thinking more in terms of color temperature because the values are already set up. So I can think in terms of a cooler blue-green and a warmer yellow-green. Or same thing back in here, kind of a warm muted orange and a muted blue-violet for the shadow. So those temperature changes really set up the suggestion of sunlight. And having the values there already helps me focus on that a lot more. So good exercise if you're struggling with combining color and value together. Sometimes it can be difficult, especially on a real complicated painting. Well, that will do it. I hope that was helpful. Please like and subscribe if it was. And if you're really struggling with color, another video to watch on this upcoming video is how to make color decisions.